Okay, let's get into this. We're diving deep today into something quite paradoxical, the idea of whiteness. It carries, well, immense social and political weight, right? But biologically, it's basically a fiction. So our mission here is to unpack this racialized designation, not ethnicity, but the political category built over time. And the key idea from the sources is really striking. This fiction eventually became a kind of legally protected property.
That's the core of it, yeah. I mean, you can trace intellectual roots back 18th, 19th centuries. Linnaeus, Blumenbach,
Yeah.
they tried creating these neat typologies. They even set up this Caucasian ideal, an aesthetic thing, really. But science moved on.
Right, the science is pretty clear now, isn't it? So why do those old ideas still stick around?
Well, partly because the political concept is much more rigid than the scientific reality. Modern population genetics, it's definitive, biological race just isn't a valid way to categorize humans. Human variation is clinal. Think colors blending smoothly on a spectrum, no sharp edges, no separate boxes. It's gradual.
So using light skin as some kind of defining marker doesn't make much sense then.
Not biologically, no. Light skin is, relatively speaking, a recent adaptation, mostly tied to UV light and vitamin D synthesis. And here's the kicker. Most genetic diversity. It's found within any population group you care to define, not between them. Pick two people from opposite sides of the planet, their genetic difference might actually be smaller than between two people living, next door in the same town.
Okay, so if biology debunks it, how did this fiction get so powerful in the real world? That takes us to the colonies and the law.
Exactly. Before the late 1600s, this idea of a single white race didn't really exist. Identity was more about, say, religion or where you came from. But colonial planters hit a snag. Missionaries started converting enslaved Africans to Christianity. Suddenly, the religious justification for lifelong slavery, it started to crumble.
Ah, so they needed a new justification, a legal fix.
Precisely. They essentially invented white as a new legal status, something fixed, inheritable. It shifted the whole basis of oppression from religion, which something could change, to race, which they defined as permanent, locked in the labor supply. And interestingly, this wasn't just about controlling black labor. It was also used to manage poor Europeans.
Right, that connects to Du Bois' idea, the psychological wage.
It gave poor white workers certain privileges, maybe better jobs sometimes, public deference, status, basically. Du Bois called it the psychological wage of whiteness. It was a way to keep them from making common cause, building class solidarity with black workers, paid in status, not just cash.
And this created some really weird, inconsistent boundaries, didn't it? Like, who even counted as white? Groups like the Irish or Italians weren't always included initially.
No, they weren't. Their inclusion wasn't automatic. They had to sort of earn it, assimilate, become white. And historical sources suggest that often involved participating in anti-black racism. It was almost like performing whiteness to gain entry to the club.
So it was flexible for some groups.
Yes, strategically flexible.
But then you contrast that with the one-drop rule for black ancestry.
Absolutely rigid exclusion there. Any known black lineage, no matter how distant, often meant you were permanently outside the category of white and its privileges, regardless of appearance. That contrast really shows it's a political gatekeeping system. Open the gate when useful, slam it shut otherwise.
Which leads to how whiteness works sociologically today, as this invisible norm, the default setting.
It's the unmarked category, the standard against which other groups are measured, often implicitly. And that very invisibility confers advantages, unearned benefits. Which brings us back to the legal angle. This biological non-fact somehow evolved, legally and culturally, into a form of property, recognized by law. And property comes with rights, including, crucially, the right to exclude.
And that right to exclude manifests as white privilege. Those systemic advantages, the benefit of the doubt, expecting the system to work for you.
Exactly. It's the unearned payoff from a system built on that initial fiction. So the concept sticks around not because it's true, but because it's been incredibly effective as a political tool. Its flexibility, its contradictions, they actually make it work for maintaining hierarchy and deciding who gets what.
Especially important to examine now, maybe, with demographic changes highlighting how much it's about social power, not biology. So we began with this paradox, a biological lie with real social power. We saw how it was legally constructed, almost like property. Here's a final thought for you then. If we really start to see whiteness not as identity, but as this system of property with legal protection, how might that change how we approach movements for equity, for redistributing resources? Something to think about.